So I want you to picture this for a second. You're on your way home from work.
Right.
It's just a typical Monday commute. You're sitting in your car, or maybe you're on the bus, listening to a deep dive like this one, just kind of thinking about what you're going to make for dinner.
The usual daily grind.
Exactly, the usual. And the traffic does what traffic always does, right?
Yeah.
It slows down.
Yeah.
But then it doesn't just crawl. It comes to a grinding, absolute halt.
Which is never a good sign.
Never. And up ahead, you don't see like the usual glow of brake lights stretching into the distance.
Yeah.
Instead, you see heavy, reinforced barricades.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. You see paramilitary forces in full tactical gear. And rising up from the industrial zone just a few miles down the road, you see this thick, dark smoke.
It's just an incredibly jarring image to try and wrap your head around.
It really is.
Because you have this mundane, everyday reality of commuter traffic jam, but it's layered directly on top of a highly volatile active security crisis. And unfortunately, for thousands of people trying to navigate the border regions between Noida and Delhi today, this isn't some hypothetical scenario.
No.
It's the exact reality they're sitting in right now.
Yeah, exactly. Because today is Monday, April 13, 2026. And our mission for this deep dive is to unpack the sudden, really intense eruption of violence happening across Noida's industrial sectors.
Right, based on the latest reports coming out of the area.
Exactly. We've got reports detailing the riots, the police respond to everything. So we're going to examine how a localized dispute over worker wages has just rapidly escalated into a full-blown regional crisis.
Yeah.
I mean, we're talking about paralyzed logistics, significant threats to regional business stability, and this massive security ripple effect that has put the neighboring national capital of Delhi on absolute high alert.
And I think to really understand the sheer scale of the response we're seeing today, especially, that paramilitary deployment at the Delhi border, we have to trace the anatomy of this unrest back to its origin point. Like, we need to look at what actually sparked the fire inside those industrial zones to begin with. Because events of this magnitude, they don't just materialize out of thin air.
No, they definitely don't. So let's start with the geography, I guess, because the epicenter of this violence is heavily concentrated in specific areas.
Yes. Phase 2 in Sector 60 in Noida.
Right. Phase 2 in Sector 60. And for anyone not intimately familiar with, the urban planning in this region, we really need to clarify what these zones actually are.
Definitely.
Because these are not just generic, empty lots with a few warehouses scattered around.
No, not
These are incredibly dense, hyper-interconnected manufacturing and industrial hubs.
And that context is so vital. Phase 2 and Sector 60, they are basically the economic engines of the area.
Yeah.
You're talking about massive industrial parks where thousands of moving parts converge daily.
Yeah.
You have raw materials flowing in, finished goods shipping out.
Right. Trucks everywhere.
Exactly. Trucks everywhere. And tens of thousands of workers migrating in and out for their shifts. It's an ecosystem built entirely on precision and flow.
Okay. Precision and flow.
Yeah. So when you introduce chaos into an environment that dense, the disruption is instantaneous and it's severe.
And the chaos today, based on the reports we're looking at, it started with a massive gathering of workers from various different industrial units across these zones.
Right.
Their stated goal was just to press for salary revisions.
Yeah.
But there's this specific phrase driving this entire situation, right? A phrase that acts as the core ingredient for the unrest.
Yes. The reports describe it very specifically.
Right. These demands for higher wages are heavily categorized as long pending.
And long pending is, it's really the psychological key to understanding everything happening on the ground today.
How so?
Well, when we analyze the sociology of massive worker protests, the timeline of the grievance is almost always the determining factor.
And whether it stays peaceful?
Exactly. And whether a protest remains peaceful or turns destructive. Like, a violent demonstration of this magnitude doesn't usually happen because of some sudden policy change announced yesterday.
Right. It's not a knee-jerk reaction.
No, it's the result of prolonged systemic friction.
I always look at it like a pressure cooker.
That's a good analogy.
You have this heat source, like the need for a living wage, the economic pressure on these workers that is just left on. The pressure builds up quietly day after day, shift after shift.
Right.
The workers file the paperwork, they go through the formal channels, they wait. But the valve is never released.
And eventually,
the lid doesn't just pop off, it blows completely off.
Yeah.
But here's where I want to push back a little and really dig into the mechanics of this.
Okay.
Because the timeline shows the workers started by raising slogans. which, that's a standard expected form of demonstration.
Completely standard, yeah.
But then very quickly, it escalates into vandalism, stone pelting, and actually setting a vehicle on fire.
Yes, that was reported in the Phase 2 area.
Right. So how does a crowd cross that threshold? What's the actual mechanism that flips a group of people from, chanting for a raise to setting a car on fire?
It's a really important question,
Hmm.
and the mechanism is basically a fundamental shift in crowd psychology.
Okay.
Specifically, what happens when peaceful avenues for negotiation appear to be entirely exhausted.
The pressure cooker boiling over.
Exactly. As
Right.
you mentioned, when demands are long pending, there's this period where the workforce believes the system will function as intended.
They trust the process.
Right, they trust the bureaucratic process.
Mm-hmm.
But when those organized demands are repeatedly met with delays or administrative silence or outright dismissal, the collective energy mutates.
So it goes from hopeful negotiation to just chaotic frustration.
Yes. And more importantly, the psychology shifts from seeking a dialogue to demanding visibility.
Demanding visibility. That makes sense.
The tipping point is this collective realization, or at least a shared perception within the crowd, that being peaceful makes them invisible. Yeah, it's like the system is ignoring their paperwork, and the system is ignoring their slogans.
So they have to escalate.
Right. The stone pelting and the arson, while incredibly destructive and dangerous, are often a manifestation of that voicelessness.
That's fascinating.
The crowd subconsciously decides that if the administration won't listen to their words, they will be forced to look at their disruption. The action itself becomes the message.
The burning vehicle isn't necessarily the goal.
No,
The goal is creating a situation that is impossible to ignore.
precisely.
But, that psychological shift from peaceful protest to property destruction, it doesn't just stay inside the factory gates.
No, it never does.
It immediately bleeds into the surrounding infrastructure.
Hmm.
Once that pressure cooker blows, the damage spills right out into the streets, which kind of brings us to the immediate fallout of this unrest.
And the collateral damage in an industrial hub is just exponential.
Yeah.
Because, we are seeing severe damage to property and vehicles across these industrial units.
Based on the reports, yeah.
But the secondary effect, the logistical paralysis, is arguably just as devastating.
Explain that.
Well, when violence erupts in a concentrated hub like Sector 60, it essentially acts as a blood clot in the regional transit system.
A blood clot. That's a grim way to put it, but accurate. Let's bring this down to the perspective of the people on the ground.
Okay.
Because I'm trying to imagine, you're a daily commuter just trying to navigate around Phase 2. Or maybe you're a worker heading to a shift at a completely different factory in the same zone.
Right. You have nothing to do with this.
Absolutely nothing to do with this specific wage dispute.
Yeah.
And suddenly you are trapped in this massive traffic congestion.
You're stuck.
You can't move forward. You can't reverse out of it. You are stuck in this terrifying liminal space between your normal daily routine and an active riot.
It is a profound disruption of public life. And, from a macroeconomic perspective, the risks for the surrounding industrial zones are just staggering.
Because of the supply chains.
Exactly. Modern industrial supply chains are finely tuned just-in-time machines.
Right. Just in time.
They do not hold massive inventories. They rely on raw materials arriving exactly when needed and finished products shipping out on a really strict schedule.
So if a business is operating in Phase 2, their stability relies entirely on predictability.
Completely. And a riot destroys predictability.
Yeah, obviously.
If you're a business operating near Phase 2, your factory might be physically untouched by the vandalism.
Your windows are fine.
Your windows are fine. But if the arterial roads around your facility are impassable because of burning vehicles and police barricades, your entire operation hits a brick wall.
Right. Your transport trucks are stuck in the gridlock.
Your workers cannot safely commute to clock in for their shifts.
Wow. Yeah.
The physical destruction is highly visible, but the invisible economic destruction of an entire regional supply chain freezing in place. That can cost millions in a matter of hours.
Which puts the local authorities in an incredibly difficult position.
Oh, absolutely.
Because they aren't just trying to put out literal fires. They are trying to restart an entire regional economic engine while simultaneously dealing with a deeply frustrated, volatile workforce.
What's a monumental task?
And the strategy they are using to manage this, according to the source material, is fascinating.
Yeah, the Gautam-Budnagar Commissionate's response.
Right. So the Gautam-Budnagar Commissionerate, which is the regional police authority overseeing this massive district, they've deployed senior police and administrative officers directly to the ground.
Yes.
They are physically monitoring the zones, and they've issued a mandate utilizing a dual strategy.
Which is really interesting.
It is. They're deploying minimum force to maintain law and order while simultaneously making efforts to counsel the workers.
And that specific combination minimum force paired with counseling is really the defining feature of modern localized riot policing, particularly in labor disputes.
Minimum force and counseling.
Yeah, because the authorities recognize a critical reality here. They are not facing a foreign invading force.
Right. These are locals.
These are local citizens. These are the workers who build the local economy, and they have a deeply rooted grievance about their livelihoods.
I understand the theory, but looking at the reality on the ground, that dual mandate seems almost paradoxical to me.
How do you mean?
Well, it sounds like the police are trying to play the roles of both a riot squad and a couples therapist at the exact same time.
That's a good way to put it.
And I have to question the practicality of that. I mean, how do you counsel a crowd that was just moments ago hurling stones and setting transit vehicles on fire?
Your skepticism is entirely warranted, honestly. And the analogy is actually perfect. It is very much like being a couples therapist. But imagine trying to conduct that therapy session while the house is actively on fire.
Right.
And one of the partners is holding a brick.
Yeah, exactly.
The mechanics of this on the ground are incredibly raw and dangerous. Counseling in this context does not mean sitting everyone down in a circle and passing a talking stick.
I would assume not.
No, it represents an immediate, improvised attempt at tactical de-escalation under extreme duress.
So what does that actually look like on the ground?
Well, it involves senior officers physically stepping forward to the front lines of the barricade.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah, they have to quickly identify the informal leaders or the most vocal elements within the protesting crowd.
Over all the noise.
Exactly. They open a dialogue, usually over the sound of chaos. And the counseling is essentially a high-stakes negotiation.
What are they saying to them?
They're delivering a very specific message, something like, "We acknowledge your wage demand, we understand you're angry, but you are actively crossing into felony territory.
Right, the arson.
We will help facilitate a meeting between your representatives and factory management, but you have to drop the stones and step back from the vehicles first."
Okay, so the counseling is an acknowledgement that brute force alone might clear the street today, but it won't solve the problem for tomorrow.
Precisely.
If you just sweep them away with batons, they will be back and likely angrier.
That is the core philosophy. Minimum force is just the blunt instrument necessary to stop the immediate arson and protect the trapped commuters we talked about earlier.
Right, you have to stop the burning cars.
But the counseling is the recognition that public safety and worker wage concerns are fundamentally intertwined.
That's a great point.
You cannot beat a workforce into long-term compliance. You cannot achieve lasting peace in an industrial zone without eventually addressing the root economic cause of the friction.
Right. And alongside this physical de-escalation, there's also an information war happening, isn't there?
Yes, heavily.
Because the reports mention authorities are actively broadcasting appeals to the public, urging them not to listen to rumors.
Which is crucial.
And this points to something really dangerous about the anatomy of a riot. Because in a vacuum of reliable information, especially when you have thousands of people stuck in gridlock seeing plumes of smoke, rumors don't just spread.
No, they don't.
They act like an accelerant.
Rumors are arguably the most dangerous element in any localized unrest.
Really, more than the actual violence.
Yes, because of how quickly they expand the violence. The mechanism is simple but deadly. When adrenaline is high and facts are scarce, people rely on whatever information reaches them first.
Right.
So, say there's a false rumor that a worker was severely injured by police.
Or a baseless claim that a factory is locking its doors and withholding pay.
Exactly. Those kinds of rumors can cause the violence to metastasize instantly. It can pull neighboring sectors, which were previously calm, directly into the riot.
Oh, wow.
So fighting that misinformation network, putting out those statements, is just as critical as setting up physical barricades on the street.
Speaking of barricades, the localized response in Noida is really only half the story here.
Yes, the broader regional impact.
Because while the authorities in Uttar Pradesh are trying to counsel workers and put out fires in Sector 60, the authorities right next door are watching the smoke rise.
And taking action?
Right. They're taking drastic measures to ensure the chaos doesn't spread to them. They're basically building a firewall.
Because regional unrest rarely respects municipal borders.
Yeah, obviously.
And the proximity of Noida to the national capital, Delhi, makes this a highly sensitive geographic bottleneck.
And the Delhi police are treating it exactly like that. I mean, they have been put on high alert.
The reports were very clear on that.
We're seeing a massive tightening of security at all key entry points into the capital. They are focusing heavily on the motorable roads and the major border points connecting UP to Delhi.
Yes.
They've employed rapid response teams, they have brought in paramilitary forces, and they are enforcing intensified barricading and thorough vehicle checks.
It's a massive mobilization.
Yes. But the stated goal of this massive deployment is what I find most compelling in these reports.
Oh, yeah.
A senior officer explicitly stated they are maintaining strict vigil to ensure that no antisocial elements enter the city under the guise of the protest.
And that phrase, antisocial elements, is absolutely crucial to understanding the life cycle of a major public disturbance.
Right, because they aren't talking about the workers.
No. The Delhi police understand that large-scale protests, particularly violent ones, create a massive logistical smokescreen.
So the fear isn't necessarily that an angry factory worker who wants a raise is going to march into Delhi.
No.
The fear is that the worker's legitimate grievance is going to be hijacked.
Exactly.
How does that hijacking actually work on the ground? I mean, who are these antisocial elements?
Well, it's essentially the broken windows theory playing out in real time.
Okay, walk me through that.
So the original crowd in Noida is composed of factory workers protesting long-pending wage hikes, right?
Right.
But once the windows are broken, once the vehicles are burning, and the local police are fully distracted trying to manage the immediate tactical crisis, a completely different element sees an opportunity.
The opportunists.
Exactly. Opportunists. These could be individuals, gangs, or organized agitators whose primary goal has absolutely nothing to do with factory salary negotiations.
They don't care about the wages.
They don't care at all. Their goal is chaos or looting or broader disruption.
Right.
They use the legitimate, localized grievance of the factory workers as camouflage to operate in the open.
Because the police are busy.
Exactly. And Delhi is a high-value target for any group looking to cause widespread disruption.
Of course.
So the Delhi police are building this paramilitary firewall because they cannot afford for that chaotic, opportunistic element to bleed across the border and infect the capital.
But the sheer logistics of building that firewall are just staggering to me.
It's a huge undertaking.
Think about the volume of commuter and commercial traffic that flows between Noida and Delhi on any given Monday.
It's massive.
Right. How do the police at these checkpoints actually filter that wave of humanity?
Carefully, very carefully.
I mean, during a thorough vehicle check, how do they distinguish between a frustrated commuter, a legitimate factory worker, and an antisocial element looking to hijack a riot?
It's an incredibly high-friction process. They're relying on rapid behavioral profiling, intelligence sharing, and physical searches.
They're looking for intent.
Exactly. They are looking for intent. A commuter trapped in traffic behaves very differently than an organized group carrying makeshift weapons or incendiaries in the back of a truck.
That makes sense.
And the constant communication between the Delhi police and their UP counterparts is vital. Here, they are constantly sharing real-time intelligence on crowd movements and suspicious vehicles.
Right.
But you are absolutely right. Enforcing this creates massive secondary gridlock. The vehicular checks essentially back the traffic up even further into Noida.
It's a brutal trade-off.
Yeah.
They're basically exacerbating the traffic nightmare to prevent a security nightmare.
That is the calculation they have to make. From a broader security standpoint, inconveniencing commuters with thorough searches is an acceptable cost.
Right.
Allowing an unchecked violent mob or organized agitators to spill over into the national capital under the cover of a labor dispute is an unacceptable cost.
Absolutely unacceptable.
So they are treating this as a fluid, active threat matrix, not just a localized traffic issue.
So when we step back and look at the entire board today, we really see how deeply interconnected everything is.
Yeah, it's a massive chain reaction.
We started with what seems like a very specific, isolated issue.
Yeah.
Workers in Noida's industrial hubs pressing for a salary revision.
Right.
But because that demand was long pending, because that bureaucratic valve was never released, the pressure cooker reached a violent boiling point.
The action became the message.
Exactly, which then triggered a cascading logistical nightmare.
Because the density of the area.
Right. We saw arson and vandalism in Phase 2 and Sector 60, which then shattered the predictability of the entire regional supply chain.
Yeah.
Local businesses that had nothing to do with the dispute found themselves paralyzed, and thousands of everyday commuters were suddenly trapped in the crossfire of a regional crisis.
And all of that forced a massive multi-jurisdictional security response.
Yeah, a dual response, really.
On one side of the border, you have the Noida authorities attempting the incredibly delicate balancing act of tactical de-escalation.
Using minimum force to stop the immediate destruction.
Exactly, while trying to literally counsel workers through the barricades.
Right.
And on the other side, you have the Delhi police erecting a massive paramilitary firewall, enforcing brutal traffic bottlenecks to ensure opportunistic agitators don't turn a localized labor dispute into a capital city security threat.
It is a stark reminder of just how fragile the ecosystem of a major industrial region truly is.
It really is.
I mean, a dispute over a paycheck, if ignored for too long, possesses the kinetic energy to shut down major highways, freeze regional commerce, and mobilize paramilitary units.
Which is why exploring long-term, trustworthy solutions for peaceful wage negotiations isn't just a matter of fairness for the worker on the assembly line.
Yeah,
It is quite literally a matter of regional security.
absolutely.
If the formal channels of negotiation actually work, if people feel seen and heard without having to throw a stone, the pressure cooker never reaches that explosive state.
Exactly. Which kind of brings us right back to you, the listener. Imagining yourself sitting in that stalled car, watching the thick smoke rise into the sky.
Waiting for the traffic to move.
Right. Because eventually, the adrenaline will fade. The traffic will slowly begin to clear.
Yeah.
The police will pack up the heavy barricades. The rapid response teams will stand down. And tomorrow, the commuters will likely go back to their normal routes.
Back to the grind.
Back to the grind. The physical gridlock will end. But it leaves us with a lingering question, one that extends far beyond the immediate police response.
What's that?
Well, when the smoke finally clears and the authorities declare return to normalcy, those long-pending salary demands will still be sitting right there on the administrative table.
They haven't gone anywhere.
No. So can you truly restore order to an industrial zone, or are you just resetting the timer on the pressure cooker if you never finally answer the question that started the fire in the first place?